Before we start today's roundtable, I want to give special thanks to Checkster, our group sponsor. Checkster has become well known in the recruiting industry by providing a platform that easily captures reference checks in the hiring process. I myself have been a customer of theirs for years. I use a reference checking tool for all of my new hires. However, Checkster has now released a new product suite called Insights. This new product suite is really what has excited me to have Checkster as the group sponsor. With Insights, the Checkster platform now covers employees from cradle to grave and not just reference checking, starting when they apply, going to offer, through onboarding, then covering their work at your company, and then to the end with exit interviews. It's an easy to use, easy to understand way of giving and getting feedback from your peers. Checkster's simple goal: to build more productive and passionate teams. Now, if this concept of getting insights from your peers regarding your work sounds familiar, it should, because that's the simple goal of this group: connecting, communicating, collaborating. Support me, support the group. Follow the link below, recruiting.org/Checkster. This will take you to a landing page to sign up for a quick demo. If you are just thinking about automating your reference checking process, it'll be well worth your time. But I encourage you to check out the full Insights suite. I'd love to find out if you feel the way I feel about it. Now let's get to today's roundtable. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending episode 78 in Let's Talk Recruiting, where TA professionals from across the industry get together and talk about various topics. I was just commenting on how I really appreciate all the volunteers to be panelists on here, because in my opinion, it says a lot about a person's level of professionalism and experience when they're open to speaking about it publicly. Kind of rolls into today's topic, which is tactics of a consultative recruiter. I think anybody who's in recruiting, corporate recruiting especially, that's the goal to get to, is to be more of that consultant versus just an order taker. I totally get when you're just starting out, that's kind of where you're at until you get to that point. But that is the end game, is to be that consultative person to both the candidates and the hiring manager. So with us today, we have Colin Russell, who I'm trying to track down, out of Los Angeles. We have Diane Carija. Did I get it right?
That's right.
Okay, good. And Kat out of Chicago. Catherine Delkey out of Syracuse. Andy Marchetti. Did I get that right, Andy? Perfect. Out of Boston, and Sherry Sims out of Cincinnati. So with that said, let's stop sharing that. There you are, Colin. All right.
Yeah.
Can I?
Everybody.
Hey, Colin, are you ready to go? I was going to have you start the conversation. Otherwise, I can have Diane jump into it if you're still getting everything situated.
No technology's on my side at the moment, so I should be good to go.
Right,
it's always a good thing.
Yeah. So let's jump over to you, Colin, and have you start the conversation.
Great. Yeah, I'll do a quick intro of myself. My name is Colin Russell, and I'm the talent acquisition manager at Cluster. Cluster supports the aerospace and defense sector in hiring engineering talent, mostly focused on the electrical engineer and hardware engineer space, but also branching out into some other fun places like machine learning and algorithm and development, that sort of thing. Did you want me to jump into my topics?
Sure, fire away.
All right. So, being a quote unquote consultative recruiter, I think at a very basic level, I think, at the very basic level, we're adding value to the process, right? And I think that value comes from a lot of different ways. I think my personal philosophy is really to start with the basics. Make sure you don't miss anything, like asking what's the salary range, or what's the location. But there's a lot of times early on in my career I sometimes forget to ask those questions, but you kind of learn the hard way and know to kind of build the foundation off of that sort of stuff. But after you've gotten through the basics and asked some of the other situational questions, like why is the position open and that sort of thing, two things that I really like to dive into, specifically because we focus on the aerospace industry, is really providing insight specific to that direct industry. What is going on in the world of hiring hardware engineers in the Bay Area at this given moment, and being able to really share key insights around time to fill and salary history for the last 10 hires I've made, and those are the types of things that you can really provide to the hiring manager that, maybe is data that's not readily available to them. And kind of shows that you have that expertise and kind of understand where they're coming from. And I think it kind of really puts you in that seat of being consultative. Another thing that we really try and do, outside of just the technical skill set that is required by our clients, is to really understand, the company values, how we can match candidates to the company values, but even further than that, the team dynamic and the team values, and really understand who makes up that team, what type of quote unquote match would we need to find as far as the personality and drive and just kind of what that candidate might want in a working environment. And that way we can help screen for those things as we're chatting with our candidates. That seems to hit the nail on the head for us.
Colin, question for you around like getting into your industry and knowing about your industry. Is there, like my last positions in the music industry. So our CHRO was always promoting, hey, know this business so you can speak the business. In aerospace, like my first question would be, and I gotta ask you this since you're in the aerospace industry. Have you ever been to Oshkosh, or what? Understand why I would ask that?
And is that in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in northern Wisconsin, even in the dead of winter. A lot different than Southern California, I can tell you that. But no, I have not been to Oshkosh specifically.
So the reason why I ask is it hosts the world's largest air show every year. Every time I meet a pilot, I always ask that question. I'm like, oh yeah, been there
that's the EAA, Sean. I've been there many times. I've lived in Wisconsin for 10 years. You nailed it. Yep.
Yeah,
the
so
EAA show.
That's always my entryway. So, and I didn't mean to catch you off guard there, Colin. But knowing that industry as a recruiter, I mean, would you recommend really getting into the details about the final end product, or would it be more about the skill sets or the labor groups that make up your company? Or when we say learning about our industry, can you get a little bit deeper on that?
Yeah, that's a great point, because there's companies that are kind of all at the different sectors of where aerospace, all the different types of companies within aerospace meets, right? There's some companies that just strictly do R&D, and you might have teams of scientists in a lab that are just kind of coming up with these wacky futuristic ideas, and really their end goal really is to maybe write a proposal to the government to kind of come up with like a proof of concept or something like that. And, and they may not even ever touch any hardware, or, that their goal isn't to bring something to production. But then you might meet a company that has, kind of cradle to grave, right? And so they need engineers that have come up with a concept, walked into a lab, put this thing together, taken it over to testing, verified it, against specifications, that are required by whatever government agency they're working with, and then literally had to run a team of, 1,000 assemblers or technicians to build, 1,000 of these things a month. And that's actually a really good point, because when you hear the term, quote unquote, mechanical engineer, right? Like that could mean so many different things in so many different settings. And so that's where, when I talk to a hiring manager and they're hiring a mechanical engineer, I need to understand, what has this person needed to have done in another setting that they're going to be able to do the types of things they're doing for your company. And that's where, when I started doing aerospace, I might send them, an HVAC, a mechanical engineer that's building, the air conditioning system for a 100-story building. And obviously they realize very quickly that I don't know much about their industry, because that's very off industry. And you quickly learn those types of things, and that's how you kind of quickly build trust with a hiring manager, because I can jump in and say, what type of materials does this person need to know, to what tolerance of heat, to be able to potentially be put on a satellite and shot up into space. And if that's the kind of question where he's like, that's my last question in my interview process that I hope to get to, and that's my first question in my screening process, then that takes a lot of the front work in their the funnel of all the candidates that they're going to have to talk to, especially the ones that come from me.
Let me ask you this too, and this is sort of for all the panelists. Once you have that, like when I look at the type of requisitions that accompanies, you kind of have your core, we call them CTGs, right? Critical talent groups that make up your company. Then you have your marketing and your legal and your HR and kind of like the corporate bucket, right? For all those. When you develop a skill in your CTGs, whether it be aerospace or biotech or what have you, are you kind of sticking in your industry, or are you kind of jumping out to other industries? Are you kind of drilling down on that expertise and putting all your money in there? And that's just sort of a general question for all the panelists. Once you have that industry expertise, you kind of stay in that industry, or do you jump out of it?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then I'd love to hear everyone else's take as well, because historically I'd worked internally where we supported recruiting lines across accounting and IT and everything, and then I've done on the agency side where maybe I was a tech recruiter or something somewhat specialized. But at Cluster, we have kind of taken that next step to specifically address one industry, which is aerospace and avionics and some automotive and electric vehicle type stuff, but very, very specific. And what that's done is it's allowed us to kind of really focus in on a very small niche of candidates. And that candidate pool typically revolves around the electrical engineers, the hardware engineers, kind of motor control, really something that kind of gets their hands on technology in kind of that space. And then it kind of branches out where I'd say mechanical and software. These days, a lot of engineers kind of get their hands in all three of those areas, but we really try and focus on that core. And I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky for us, but those are like the very, very hard to fill positions these days. So, we have to obviously spend a ton of time trying to identify candidates, but you also, when you talk to these companies, that's where they're seeing their time to fill jump over 100, 200 days. And if we can come to them and say, we have candidates ready to go into space, their response is, how soon can we start talking to your candidates a lot of times?
What about everybody else? Just curious around that.
I'll jump in, Sean. I don't think I've ever stayed within a CTG in my career. I've kind of looked at where I could look across industry. So kind of building off what you said, Colin, I was in oil and gas for a long time. So, right, petroleum reservoir engineers, we go to the MECs and we look at transferable skill set. I translated that into heavy industrial manufacturing. But I think once you learn a little bit about a segment or an area, I think having that passion for learning so you can look at adjacent markets and adjacent areas to supplement your knowledge base and really help think a bit more broadly about talent pools is helpful. Did that same sort of thought process around supply chain. Everybody has supply chain opportunities and core functions of their businesses, and how do you apply that knowledge across? So I think just being able to have that innate curiosity, ask the questions and see where you kind of dig across. Where we do those real specialty niche recruiting positions is where I'd toss it over to a specialist. But I think there's something to be said to be a Renaissance recruiter.
Interesting. Excellent.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. Personally, my focus has been around technology. So there's that kind of common thread for a technology recruiter. But, the business that you're supporting, there are a bunch of different variables. And I think Catherine nailed it, because that's the most helpful thing as a recruiter. Whatever business you're working with, they think they're unique. And, what we're doing, no one else faces these challenges. And in some respects, they're right. There are unique challenges in things we're dealing with. But for the most part, there are a lot of common themes that you can draw from, and challenges you faced, and, can even give you a unique perspective on how to approach something from that business's perspective. So I agree with Catherine. It's really good to be as well-rounded and curious and get exposed to as much as you possibly can. As a recruiter, no one's saying you need to be an expert in that business area. You just have to have, good curiosity and understanding of, kind of the recruiting efforts that you're doing and how those impact your business. So.
Excellent. Okay. Well, yeah, thank you very, very much for that piece of it. Yeah, I just got, Colin kind of sent me on a tangent around that industry expertise. I've just been like in the biotech. They all seem to stay in biotech, right? Because it's that deep knowledge, or computer gaming. They stick in computer gaming. But I do like to see the transition. It's almost like Sherlock Holmes can solve any type of crime. He just needs to know how to solve the crime, no matter what it is. All right. Thank you very much, Colin. Diane, can we jump over to you and your items?
Hi, I'm Diane Carica. I lead the talent acquisition team for a generic pharmaceutical company and med device company in the Chicagoland area. But just to take off on that, and then I saw someone in the chat ask, how do you convince your hiring managers to look at people outside of your, the immediate, like you said, biotech. We have that same problem in pharma. They only want people from pharma, only can people from pharma, and it's a small world, so it's only so many people that we can keep recycling. So I think what helps, we haven't, I'm not saying we have not been all that great successful. What it does work, referrals from people they know. If we, not us, people they know, then all of a sudden they'll open their eyes a little bit more. That works. Second of all, I think that with the focus on diversity is really going to help with this. I'm really hoping to that this will help, because it's not just diversity about gender and race. It's about diversity even in your industry. It's cross industry. Like this also brings, like an engineer in a different industry brings a whole different perspective. It's still an engineer, right? So it can, we have to start showing that in all areas, diverse talent is valuable. And yes, initially it may take longer for that person to get up to speed, but we know that once they get up to speed, the incremental success or accomplishments that they have are so much better. So we just got to keep, working that narrative all around. But I've been a corporate recruiter, and I'm really pushing my team to be consultants to the hiring managers, because they don't, I want them to look at us as we are consultants. We're not, somebody else said about being a service person or a consultant. They don't have our expertise. They don't do this all the time either. They don't time. They need to know what's going on in the market. Like, what do the candidates want to hear about? The candidates want to hear about promotional opportunities. Huge, right? We all know this. So we got to get these, we got to teach them that this is what they have to talk about. Find out who in their group has left. Where have they gone? Did they get promoted? And so that you could share this story with the candidate, but so can they. They need to understand that this is what the candidate wants to hear about. Also get to know the makeup of the team. So yeah, the job descriptions probably look the same for 5 of the team members currently, but each one of those team members has a stronger bent, right? Where is the missing link? Is it in, maybe this one's good at presentations, or this one's good, where's the missing link of that job description that you're really trying to fill that hole in the team? And then understanding what they do for fun, because that's another thing. Like, we bring that expertise of what's going on in the marketplace, and we need to educate our hiring managers to this point. Also the process, they also don't understand the process. Plus, I don't know about your company, but the process is always changing. It changes very fast now with technology. You need to help them understand these different, the tools that you use and how it will look, and set expectations. Another key area is the interviewing. So my company gets dinged on all the time is we have too many interviewers. And so one time I had this guy, he said, I want them to interview with 9 people. I'm like, oh my gosh, 9 people, how am I going to get this around, right? So I said, how do we group them? How about we have like a couple, maybe group interviews, like maybe three team members at a time. And he liked that. Also, I think you need to help them understand, you have to really take time to look at this interviewing process and set it up. If you're going to have 6 people interview, don't have those 6 people ask the same question 6 times. You give this group, here, you're the project manager expert. You ask about project management. You delve into that skill. Here's the engineering, the technical piece. You delve into this skill. Here's the leadership. You delve into this skill. Then when you come together in the debrief, everybody brings that. It wasn't boring for the candidate. It gave the candidate an opportunity to show all of their skill sets, not just, one, and it's not boring. And also you come away with much more information than everybody asked the same question and everybody pretty much got the same answer. So I think, and then onboarding, I think that's another area that you really got to talk to, because we all know that we're losing a lot of people. I don't know about you, but in my company, most of the people, the biggest loss of people was in that first year. And so we have to believe that that's due to onboarding or poor onboarding. So, you know, really kind of drill in, what are you going to do? How are you going to ask them these questions? And basically you're really consulting to them on the whole hiring. Also bringing the numbers. I also heard about this where a group from another company, they had a competition where they had hiring managers, like the top hiring manager of the got an award of something because they were the fastest to respond to resumes sent, and you know, their hiring time was really shorter. They had some criteria that they set up, and then they kind of had a fun competition amongst just hiring groups and who was the best hiring manager. And again, what you're doing there is you're showing them that this is really important. Timing is really important. We're losing these people, you know. We don't have, you know, a month anymore. You have to be focused on this process, and you have to get back to us and understand that. And then when you're getting everybody involved, that kind of worked too. I thought that was really cool. I wanted to do that. And then the last thing I would say is again, knowing that market and saying, oh, at the end of the year, quarterly or semi-annually, or even once a year, to go and say, here's all the people we hired. Here's who we hired last year, who stayed, you know, who's got promoted, what companies were they hired from? Are we hiring everybody from X company? Maybe we should diversify. Where are we getting them from this industry? How many relocated? Just that data that we collect in HR. I mean, this is all corporate recruiting that I'm talking about. But I think that would open, because they're not paying attention to that. They're worrying about their function. And I think it's valuable for the next successful hire.
Dan, let me ask you, and maybe just for all the panelists, I'm going to drill down a little bit on you're highlighting education, right? We're the experts in the recruiting process and the hiring process. We should be educating our hiring managers and hiring teams. What are some ways, and I'll throw out an example also so it can set the tone here, around educating those managers. And I'd seen, as a senior staffing leader, do a focus group for the finance department, right? Around every hiring manager, and she did it at once. It wasn't like you go take a course on the LMS, but she got everybody in the room and really worked through the hiring process. And I think she just escalated herself 100 points on the reputation skill with this group. The CFOs are in there. You had all your directors, your VPs, all the hiring managers. Do you do any, and this goes for other panelists, when it comes to educating your hiring team? I think this really is the best example of being a consultant or consultative, is educating. What are some ways that we educate our hiring teams? I'll put this open to the panel. Is anybody doing any training?
Yeah, I do, and I work for Brightview. I'm director of talent acquisition for Brightview, and our business is addiction treatment centers. We open them across the state of Ohio, moving and opening addiction treatment centers in Kentucky. And so with the growth that we have, even though we've been in business for probably about 5.5, 6 years, we still operate very much like a startup. So we're growing rapidly. So what I do is quarterly training, and I leave it as an open invitation. So if someone wants a refresher on the hiring process, or maybe they're having questions about the interviewing skills, because we move so quickly, it's hard to structure that out, because we're in corporate, but then we have our addiction treatment centers where they're moving a mile a minute, right? I mean, you know, counseling and checking in patients and getting them intake, getting them onboarded into our treatment centers. So I do a quarterly training, and I really leave it open for them to sign up to do more of a Q&A. I keep it with the basic information each time, and then it turns into more of a Q&A, real-time question scenario. This is what's been going on, and they get the education that way. The second way that I do it is I will participate in the clinical supervisor or ops director's weekly meetings. So I will pop in, like they'll put me on the calendar for like 5 minutes, and I will say, hey, or 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how long they have for the meeting. And I will say, hey, I'm here to answer any questions you may have in reference to our process, you know, anything related, all things TA, if they have questions that I can answer then. And that just gives them some sort of support. And when they know I'm coming in, they're more apt to have a question prepared for me. And it was like, well, we know Sherry will pop in for 5 minutes, so I asked her then. So I try to make sure I'm available for those meetings. Now, sometimes I'm not, but I try to at least commit to twice a month to pop into those clinical supervisor or ops director meetings.
That's great.
Mhm.
Any other tactics around training?
Just
A lot.
one,
Go ahead.
just one thing that we've started to do. We started working with a lot of startups, where there isn't a lot of process in place quite yet. So typically during that initial intake meeting, we find a lot of holes in the process at that point. So, first off, as a hiring consultant, we do try and just kind of share best practices. And, historically, when you have an interview panel structure, that yields better results at the end and things like that. But we also try and build, kind of a library of documents or forms, or just different tools that are easily shareable and just to at least kind of create a baseline for them, and things like interview guides and interview feedback forms and super basic stuff, but just stuff that just provides a little bit of structure to their lives and hopefully makes their lives a lot easier, and especially for those startups that just haven't even thought about putting something like that together. It kind of gets them from 0 to at least 10% of the way there pretty quickly.
I was going to say another thing is, LinkedIn, I mean, everybody's selling talent insights, right? And so if you can get hands on that, I think data is king, and people look at the numbers, especially, I mean, I'm in a very analytical type of company, science-based, so numbers speak to them. And I think that we need to be using those more, collecting them and presenting them to them.
Excellent. Yeah, Colin, I've seen going back to yours about those guides. What do you call it? It's an interviewing playbook for hiring managers, or for interviewing playbook for first-time hiring managers. It's just kind of a guide, a little intro when you're just starting. You've just been promoted, or it's your first requisition at a company, your first hiring. It was a little intro, and hey, if you want to talk more, we're here to help type deal.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, Sean, because what I also do too, if we hire a new clinical supervisor and ops director, I get on the calendar and immediately get them and trained into our ATS system and onboard them with help them to understand our onboarding process, how to use our ATS, get them onboarded to use our, to really get acclimated to our recruiting process overall. So that happens within the first 2 weeks of, them starting. That I'll do that individual one-on-one training as well.
I've done reports where I look at the average new recs of a hiring manager during a given year, and it's surprisingly low. It may just be the company or what have you, but if you're only hiring like once or twice a year, it's not a whole lot of time to build an expertise for as you get promoted in your career, and you're making bigger hiring decisions based upon 2 or 3 experiences of 2 or 3 people. So there's always that room for that additional expertise from the TA team. All right, I'm going to keep things going. We're getting deep in these conversations. Catherine, let's jump over to you and your items.
Great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. So Catherine Dahlke, I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition for Oneida Nation Enterprises in Central New York. Oneida Nation Enterprises is an umbrella company that sits over multiple gaming, hospitality, and entertainment businesses here in Central New York, but we're pretty disparate. We're also an 8A contractor, so I do government contract hiring. So we've got the gamut of opportunities, a lot of hourly salary positions, and shameless plug, I'm looking for a search manager. Hit me up on the messaging later. We can talk about that. Both, the topic was being a consultative recruiter. And for me, I read that as having a seat at the table. And the way you get at a seat at the table is you've got to build some street cred with your customer, whether you're an entry-level recruiter or on up the line. And I learned very early on in my career to do that, I have to sit in the chair of the roles that I'm marketing to. I need to understand the business flow end to end, where positions connect and link, understand the perspective of the folks coming into these roles, what the managers are looking for, what the market is saying. So, we mentioned, being a sponge and really, really learning about the role. And then when I do get that opportunity to be in that chair, I love it when I'm in a leadership meeting or with hiring managers, they look around the room, they say, well, I thought the HR gal was going to be here, the recruiter was going to be here. I'm like, well, I am here. And they said, well, you don't talk like HR. You actually speak the language of our business. So for me, speaking the language of whatever business that I'm in helps me have that credibility. A great example, I had made transitioned industries out of oil and gas into battery manufacturing of all things. And they were a very strong manufacturing oriented Six Sigma company. And in my onboarding, I heard about a Lean Six Sigma class. And I told my boss, I'm going to go take that class. And he said, no, you're not. You're new to the company. I'm like, why would you want to do that? I said, that's all these guys, that's all these ops leaders speak. So by standing up, taking that class, connecting with the rest of the org, at BT Dubs, I was the only one who graduated from that class and the only HR person to get my green belt. Just putting that out there.
All right. Good for you.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. But, walking out of there and being able to talk about speed, quality, and best delivery cost, getting in tune with what the business needs are, it elevates your status. Now your customers are ready to listen. So when you're coming at them and saying, look, let's talk about your process. It's too long, as Diane said. We don't need 8 people to tick the box and ask the same questions. Now they're more willing and receptive to listen to what you have to say to them around shifting gears. And again, it doesn't have to be as extensive as, going through an entire Greenbelt certification. It's spending time on the shop floor or in the industry or in the chair of the folks that you're working with, understanding what's happening in the market. It's having that insatiable curiosity to learn more and just being attuned. LinkedIn's a fabulous resource. I browse it over coffee to see what's popping in different industries and how that can lend credibility to what I'm doing. And I'm going to flip that around a little bit. We're recruiters, so what do? We ask questions. We interview candidates all day long. We need to flip the script and do that with our hiring managers. So I was watching the thread here, and we're talking about things like, well, it's not an intake call, it's a consultative conversation. Have the courage to ask the tough questions. Obviously tick the box and understand salary, et cetera. Why is it open? What is this position going to do for you that's different? What's the game changer? Put it in the perspective of the candidate. Why would they want to come work here? What are they going to accomplish in the first couple of years? And I've pushed back a lot in those conversations to say, that's great. What you've just told me is not anywhere in this job description. So if you want me to get that, this isn't going to get me there. I'm not going to chase a purple squirrel, out there. So let's go back and let's refine what we're doing. Again, I can speak that directly because, 30 years in, I've got a little bit of that street cred. There's a gentler way to do it when you're coming up the ladder. And I think it's, again, building that rapport and that relationship. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Don't be afraid to get out there and on the floor and learn the biz. It puts you in some great scenarios. I mean, I've been in clean labs, I've been in smelters, I've been on, oil rigs out there. It's kind of cool to be able to get out and do those things. It's why we signed up to be recruiters, right? Because we like to learn. So in a nutshell, that's what I would say would be, for me, some key kind of big ticket items to go after if you want to be a consultative recruiter.
Catherine, around I'm just going to call it intake meeting. That's what I've always called them. Do you think that's an area where recruiters should be mastering and continue to master that skill and getting that street cred and setting that tone?
Absolutely. And it's really understanding your audience, right? So, just like you would prep for an interview by reading the resume, know who you're going to sit down across the table and talk to. If my business leader is all about the numbers, I'm bringing the data deck for me. If this person's more relationship oriented, I'm going to come in and have a conversation about how their weekend was, how their golf game's going. I've had to learn an awful lot about sports and teams and different things happening in different parts of the country, just to be able to have an icebreaker. But yeah, Sean, having that knowledge walking in the door, and then just being able to connect and ask those questions, but make sure it's purposeful. Just don't go in there like, hammering with the questions. Engage in a dialogue. Show them that you're connecting with them.
What do you think about recruiters? Let's say I'm good at it, but I don't think I've mastered it. I want to get there. Am I out of line asking to go to another recruiter and say, hey, can I sit in on your meetings? I just want to sit and observe. Am I kind of intruding, or should I be doing that, kind of learning from my teammates?
As long as they're sitting with someone who knows what they're doing, sure. I think that's a great idea. That's our job as leaders, to help match up and find peer coaching and peer learning is phenomenal. I do that with my recruiters. I also do that with hiring managers when I'm training them how to interview, put them with someone who's stronger so they can see.
Because I do kind of think recruiting is like something you learn on your own for the most part, unless you're out there asking. I mean, I started out in the agencies where you're in the pit, right, where it's open and you can hear everything that everybody else is saying. So you're learning that way. You got a manager yelling and cussing at you as you're doing it. You come from agency, you probably know what I mean. But then moving into the corporate world, everybody had offices and was isolated and managed their own process. So I rarely see, let's sit back as a team. I have seen it, but rarely, where we sit back and talk about ways we work and what works as a recruiting team. Am I off on that, or is that something you guys practice at your companies and stuff like that? I'm learning within the team.
No, I think that's a really good point. You know, if anything, sometimes sitting with another recruiter and listening in, you might even learn what not to do more than what to do.
That's
But,
true.
you know, I do think, you know, everyone has their own individual personality, you know, and I think that kind of flows into you as a recruiter. So I don't think, you know, the point is to learn someone else's personality or style or how they recruit. But I think every time you kind of learn maybe a little tip here or there that you may kind of add to your toolkit. And as you learn to more and more calls, you know, eventually you're walking into your calls with a full set of tools, and you know each situation is a little different and you never know which tool you have to pull out, but you know the more you have, I think the better prepped you are for your calls.
And I'd say even if it's not kind of formally set up training, it's one of the reasons I'm a big proponent. Well, prior to March of 2020, it was in person, but you know, video team calls is, even if we don't have burning topics to discuss, what are people dealing with? What challenges are we facing?
Yeah.
Not only does the team get an opportunity to hear what someone else is facing, but you hear different perspectives and solutions and challenges and you know, approaches. So I think it's really important for recruiters to be able to have that interaction and that trust with one another. That, hey, we're kind of in this together. We have the same goal. What are you doing that may be different from how I'm looking at it? And frankly, some of the best recruiters that I've worked with have that mindset. When things aren't going wrong, they're not blaming other people. They're taking a step back and saying, what am I not doing? What am I missing? Who can I talk to? So I think to encourage that is really key in the development, you know, of any recruiter.
It's like nobody can go to school to become a recruiter. So it's a true profession. Every company has them, but there's no major in college for it. I always find that kind of funny. All right. Andy, let's sort of continue with you and your items. Thank you, Captain.
Sure. I mean, the biggest linchpin in my mind to establishing that consultative relationship between recruiters and hiring managers is really building credibility, right? You think about in your own personal life. If you're looking for relationship advice, are you going to take it from the friend of yours who's in a new relationship every 2 months and there's always drama and disaster? Or are you going to take it from the friend who's, you know, been in a long-term stable relationship, just as an example? The hiring manager is going to be looking at you in a similar way. You know, most hiring managers I've interacted with are very open to that. They know that, look, typically it's, I have to hire, I don't have time to hire. I need someone who can help me. I need someone who can drive this. I need someone who can deal with those challenges. So they're looking for you to step up. So it's really key. And, you know, I firmly believe it starts with that intake meeting or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You set the tone. I think Catherine is spot on. A really big piece of it is understanding who you're dealing with and how to approach them and what's going to make them open up and be more comfortable. Some managers are very analytical. They want the data. Others are very conversational. They want, you know, they want someone they can talk to and open up with and that sort of thing. So establishing that type of relationship. But at the end of the day, once you start delivering advice that comes to fruition, you're going to gain their trust more and more and more with each position that you're dealing with them on. So even if it doesn't happen overnight, where you get to that point in that relationship, you need to understand that you're building that bridge. I think every recruiter, all of us on the panel, I think every recruiter listening has been in that situation. And it's a horrible feeling because part of you wants to be like, I told you so. And the other part of you was crushed. but where you've warned a manager about multiple red flags in a candidate and they just can't get over how much they love their experience, or they went to my alma mater and sure enough, something happens, the candidate declines the offer, they stop responding. So that's my other kind of thing is sometimes you have to crash the car. And that doesn't mean that you do it intentionally and, put a brick on the gas pedal and walk away. But warn the manager, the hiring team that you're working with that, hey, here are some things I'm not necessarily comfortable with. Here are some concerns I have. I think that should extend into your submittal notes to managers when you do submit a candidate. It shouldn't all be glowing. You should highlight some concerns, just so managers can dig more deeply. And again, it builds your credibility. Some managers think, well, you're a recruiter, you just want to fill the position. It's like, well, I do, but I don't want to backfill it in 90 days.
Yeah.
So, we talked about using LinkedIn Insights, Career Builder. I'm not sure if they still do. They used to have a pretty good market data tool, bringing that data to bear, to talk about, hey, look, this is what you're asking for. Here's what's out there that meets that criteria. And here's the money they're looking for. So, you can, and they may not in that conversation say, you're right, we're going to make a ton of changes, we're going to bump the pay rate, but you've kind of planted that seed, and then you start to demonstrate through your candidate submittals, hopefully your weekly check-in calls, that look, we're struggling a little bit here. Here are some things we can do that I think will really boost that pipeline. So it's really about, in their minds at times, being a prophet, that they're not seeing something, you're telling them about it, and it comes to fruition. So, the other big thing is having the confidence. Look, we're all at different stages in our careers and development as recruiters, but it's safe to say that pretty much all of us are experts when it comes to hiring and recruiting. You think about your friends and your family and even the hiring managers you work with, chances are you know a lot more than they do about the current candidate marketplace. What a successful interview and hiring process looks like, those sorts of things. So, have the confidence to push back, and to present things from that perspective.
So, Andy, let me harp a little bit on that last thing about having the confidence. Let me kind of flip it a little bit on you. So we've been talking about having a really good intake meeting and setting the tone and establishing yourself. And this is sort of for all panelists too, does anybody kind of, I call them AARs, after action reviews. Does anybody go and have that conversation after the position has been filled, kind of go in with kind of this setting of, hey, I want to have I think this is how we phrased it. The rec has been filled, the hire has been made, it's done, and you want to have a hopefully quick meeting to discuss about what I could have done better. Right? And to have that open, hey, I'm confident in hearing my critiques back at me. But that's how we would generalize it. But does anybody do an after review, like an after meeting with the hiring manager, hiring team, what have you, about the process? I'm only really thinking like at the higher level skills, not your high volume positions or anything like that, but really where there's a real search, a real analysis done, having that after action review. Does anybody do follow-up meetings?
We do something called lessons from experience, and we call them LFEs. So we call legacy, which is our existing treatment centers. They're up and running, they're treating patients. And then we have what we call de novos, which is our new sites that are under construction, under development, scheduled to be open on a certain date. And once those new sites open, then we go in and we'll do a LFE for talent acquisition and say, okay, what did we learn from the experience of recruiting for this new site? And even though it's the same positions that we recruit for, the same critical talent group that we recruit for each site, each experience is different. There's different challenges with identifying, hiring for specific roles, which is based on the talent, it could be the region, the location. There's a lot of rural area in Ohio, a lot of rural areas in Kentucky. So sometimes some of the treatment centers that are being built are in those areas, and it can be tough. So we do the roundtables for the LFEs immediately within the first week of the new site opening, to talk about what we learned and what could we do better moving forward.
Anybody else?
I think, Sean, we do them for typically big events. So I know you said the higher level. And so first of all, I'm going to steal your idea. So thank you. I've learned something today, and I will do after action reviews now for my leadership.
I know that
positions.
is
I think
good.
that's helpful. Like thing, but no, we've done it. We do about 1 to 2 large events annually, and we try to get very creative about drawing applicants through. And it's usually a one and done event where we're bringing people in and getting them through a process, extending an offer, and starting background check all in one day. So we're constantly trying to lean that out. So we'll spend time, about 5 days later, we'll look at everything from the marketing plan and, what the pull-through rate was, what our success in hiring was, what our drop-off rate was, what the experience was like. We'll survey the applicant pool for the candidates. What is it like for the hiring managers? What do we need to tighten up? Do we shorten the hours and extend the reach? So we've done it really because that's our opportunity to say, what can we as a function do better for you? When we're trying to hit these bogeys, what worked, what didn't work out there, and what can we do better the next time? So we've done it on that scale.
Yeah, I always thought
I like that idea a lot, Sean. I'm going to steal it as well. We do hiring manager surveys to get feedback after the fact, and on some very high profile roles, we'll do them. And to be perfectly honest, we usually don't do them unless something went sideways, and then we look at it. But I like that idea.
You may take a few punches in the beginning, but if you're getting better, it'll be short-lived, right? And then this is what they're looking for. And it just helps, right? In my years of actual consulting, that's what I always ask is, hey, what could I have done better? What did I miss? Oh, Sean, you should have done this, that, and the other. So then I would use that the next time around, and you just escalate yourself by learning how to dodge the punches, so to speak. But we did the hiring manager satisfaction surveys too. You don't always get, you kind of make surveys quick and stuff like that. So that is a must do, a checkbox item that you should do. But I would sort of always go beyond it, because that verbal conversation, and that's where you can sort of pry a little bit. So it should be in addition to, but yeah, the satisfaction survey should be a must. I'll give you a real world experience. We had a recruiter that was getting 50-50 on her hiring manager satisfactions. Half the group loved her, half the group, not so much. She ended up getting managed out, but I'm like, man, she should have been told about that, so she could go to those managers that she's not hitting it with and find out what the issue is. And then she's either going to choose to resolve it or not. But not having that chance, it's like, let's develop people, and you can only develop by knowing where your weak areas are and stuff like that. So I always like having those verbals. Yeah, I call them an AAR. That's an Army thing. I don't know what the real world call them. Somebody in the chat called them a post-mortem. I would never call it that. That sounds too morbid. All right, Sherry, let's jump over to you and your items.
Yes. So of course, I work for Brightview. Of course, we have addiction treatment centers all across the state of Ohio, and we're moving into Kentucky and building out there as well. And we really, for us, I guess for me, my points, I'm the director of talent acquisition, should I say. We have a team of talent acquisition specialist and the sourcing specialist that we just brought on. And we also have a TA coordinator. So we're responsible for full cycle recruitment throughout the company. So for us, I think the biggest thing is making sure that we're continuing to build credibility. Our team is new for a long time, which is me and 1,000 recs by myself doing it all. Which was like, a pain in its side, but I was getting it done. And so now that we have a team, which is great, it's definitely been helpful. We have 3 lines of business that we pretty much are like our critical talent groups, which is our medical, clinical, and the medical is like our medical directors, the advanced practitioners. Clinical is clinical supervisors, counselors, case managers. Then we have our operations team, which is operations directors, MAs, medical assistants, front desk. And then we have nursing, which is RNs and LPNs. And so that's pretty much a lot of our critical groups that we hire for our sites. And so with it being a new company, when I came into the organization, it was just me. We had no processes. We didn't have an external hiring process, internal hiring process. Applicant tracking system was horrible. We revamped to use someone else. And we got to another ATS. So I pretty much built the entire thing from scratch. All right. So we're at a place now that where 3 things that we still continuing to do. Because coming into the organization, we came in backwards, which they built the business. Everyone was kind of doing their thing with hiring. And now here comes Sherry wanting to put in processes in place. So we've had to, 1, build credibility. to, which is what we continue to do as the team now grows in its place. So our mentality is to have a consultative mindset, be subject matter experts, and help to guide that, which has been a little bit of a challenge because we do have a lot of our managers who are used to doing their own thing and think they know how to interview, and we had to reel that in and say, no, you do not. So we've had that challenge in being able to bring them on board. So building credibility is one. Process improvement has been a huge thing from us. We work in a continuous state of improvement. So as we grow, we have to look at, we went from 200 employees to 550 within 12-month time frame, and it will double again, and it will double again. So process improvement is huge for us in terms of looking at where we are now and how can we continue to support and change and modify based on the growth of the organization, which means we're supporting more hiring managers. As more people get promoted into leadership roles like regionals and VPs, how are we continuing to support them? And we're unique in a way that we have a lot of engagement with our C-suite and our VPs, direct engagement, which is a lot of times you may not have that. So we have to make sure that we are on a level that that we're presenting our details in two separate ways, high level, and then for our frontline managers as well. So we're having to make sure that we're communicating in two different ways with our teams. And the last thing is interview styles. We put a lot of focus on understanding the interview style of the specific hiring manager, and not necessarily changing our process to that, but understanding their style so we can help them to be more to make sure they're selecting the right talent for the roles based on how they communicate and engage with with their hiring, with their talent. And then it's been an adjustment for COVID because a lot of people do not like video interviewing in our company. They do not like it. So we've had to kind of train on that as well and help them to understand that a video interview is just as important as an in-person. And you still can see the personality, and you can still engage and find and really hone in and dive deep on if they are the best talent for the role. And kind of move away from the bias, because we have discovered a lot of bias with our hiring managers with the video interview process, and we've had to work on that as well. So those are some of the things right now are probably the big hot items that we're focusing on with the growth that we have in the organization right now.
Sharon, let me ask you a question around the communication piece from you to the business, to the hiring managers, especially if you're coming in and creating and affecting change and you're growing with it and you're continuing your expertise. So you talk like, I believe you, everybody knows Sherry, they know what to expect from Sherry and everything like that. What advice could you give around, because communicating is a big part of being a consultant, and especially if you're doing it at a program-wide level, how are you communicating changes that are coming, expectations, the bar, what to expect for crazy situations like COVID? Are you just like sending emails or having conversations in the hall pre-COVID or what have you? But how are you delivering that communication piece to your company?
Yeah, we do it two ways. We do it through email, but then there is another, we have a call every Tuesday, which I call kind of our roundtable. So I have all of our regionals, our VPs are on the call. And then we have a second call, two separate calls with the regionals and the VPs, where we give them an update on all of our open positions. But that's where I take the opportunity to discuss changes within our processes, updates, open the dialogue for them to have questions about it, and just kind of making sure that they're up to date on what's going on with us. So I use that opportunity. And then the second call, where we give updates specifically on our new hires and where they are in the process of onboarding. And then I will utilize that call, since I have everyone on the call, all the hiring managers, to update them on any changes within our process, and also to get feedback from them on what has been working in their sites. And then we also have our HR director, she's on the call as well. And then she will give an update on our onboarding processes, and then leave it open for Q&A to get them up to speed. So we use those two big meetings that we do through Microsoft Teams to open that communication for them to ask questions.
And you're doing video in those meetings? Is that fair to say?
Yes, some people are on video and some people not. They want to. Some people show their faces, and other people hide behind the video. But it's okay as long as they're there. My main thing is I don't care how you show up. Just show up, so we can make sure that you are current on what's going on with our processes, and find out what's going on in your area too.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is years ago when I was doing consulting in the recruiting world, I was working with, I had a run there, I was working with like 5 venture capital firms. They just was ticking there. And one of them did it right. And it's very experienced in business knowledge, helping other businesses grow, obviously as a VC. I remember him saying to me one time, because I would always have to travel to go there. And I think I made a comment where, well, can't we do this, over email? He made a comment where, and this is a very experienced person, he said, consultants need FaceTime. Don't hide behind your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of stuck in me. If you want to get to that consultative level, don't hide behind your inbox or your email. You literally need FaceTime. And with given our current situation, well, hello, Zoom, you can't walk down to the hallway anymore and see people. So scheduling, that's what I was asking about the outtake and the intake meetings, stuff like that. Is it like video? Are you getting your FaceTime? Because that word is like, or that sentence was uttered to me like 10 years ago, but it's always
Yeah.
stuck with me
We
to that
use our
level.
Microsoft Teams. It's like on the hip, mobile phone, the whole, Microsoft Teams, we live by it. And that's, for us, I hate to say it, but a lot of our managers do not read the emails. And so that's why I'm able to utilize Teams to communicate the updates across the board. They hear it, they're there, they can listen to it. And then I may follow up with a couple of different points. So yeah, when you're absolutely right, the FaceTime is key. And I know that it definitely has been effective for us, utilizing it more now that we're in this COVID stage of society right now, that it definitely has been helpful. I don't know if we will ever go back or go away from that now that it's been so effective.
Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
Anytime. I think it's here to stay, even post COVID when everything's quote unquote back to normal. I think Zoom and Teams and everything like that is sort of taking over the world. So it goes back to mastering one of the arts or requirements of our trade, mastering Zoom and video interviewing and how to manage these meetings. It's going to be another task for us another hat for us to put on. Right, we're coming close to an hour. Thank you so much for the great conversation. Any final thoughts or comments around establishing yourself as not only establishing yourself, but maintain it? Catherine, to your point, getting those types of certifications, awesome. I think somebody said in the comment, I don't know if it was about what your statement or not, about, well, how does that build your career? I don't know if I read it right, but I would love to have that. I think that type of business expertise just goes across the board in so many different ways. So kudos on that one. Even like the project management certification, when you see recruiters or staffing leaders with that type of outside of recruiting expertise, okay, I can learn from this person.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents. And any final thoughts or comments around the whole topic?
Don't be afraid. Be fearless. Get out there. Zoom is the great leveler for connecting. Going back to the comment about FaceTime and building those relationships. I tell my team all the time, don't hide behind email. Have a conversation. Get in front of them the way you can. Reinforce the message in a documented email, but stay connected, stay engaged, stay curious. Go for it. I mean, that's what we do. Stay hungry.
Excellent. Andy, Sherry,
Yeah.
Colin?
Yeah, I would say just, I love what Catherine said, just become a subject matter expert, and you're already that within being a recruiter, but become that in the industry you're recruiting for as much as you can. I think it's kudos to you. High five, Catherine, for that green belt. I think that's important as well, because they do see that you are, you have a level of knowledge for some hiring managers that you can compete with, right? In terms of being able to hold your own in terms of understanding the business. And so again, grab as much knowledge as you can. And there's nothing wrong with even finding someone in the industry that you can learn from, even within your organization. If there's someone who is a higher level that's willing to pour into you and help you to become more of an expert, knowledge in that capacity, utilize it. And, don't be afraid to collaborate from that perspective.
And the only thing I would say is be accountable. In my experience, people who own up to their mistakes and work to fix them are forgiven and praised. People who point fingers and make excuses, it's not often the case. So don't ever shy away from that. If it's not great news, tell a manager. If you made a mistake, own it. Get in front of it.
I agree
Yeah, and
with
I'll
that
kind
100%.
of I'll piggyback off that. I don't think any recruiter gets to a point where they're perfect. We're all
Right.
running into tougher recs and tougher hiring managers. And I think as long as you're walking away from those situations, learning a thing or two, we're always improving. And I think that's the goal of every recruiter, right?
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. Well, with that said, hey, thank you everybody for your time and conversation. Much appreciated. I'll let you go and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.